Good morning, all. Doing literary Cappy or literature Cappy. A previous client of mine who writes at a website called The Sardonic Poet. Name's Ralph Tucito. Or I'm sorry, not Ralph. John Tucito. Ralph is his middle name. You could read his stuff there. But he wanted me to read an essay he wrote. And like everything, if you pay, I play. And this is titled The Culture of Certainty. The culture of certainty divides us with reckless ignorance. Their ignorance censors your truth. Your ignorance censors their truth. I resent people who are offended by honesty because without honesty, ignorance controls your freedom to think. When the majority are ignorant, honesty is a crime. Our thoughts are illegal. John Ralph Tucito. Tucito. He spelled it phonetic. Tucito. All right. It's not Tucito, it's Tucito. AKA the Sardonic Poet. This is a living document. There will be constant additions and subtractions from this page as the nature of politics guaranteed to sharpen and disprove my theories. My mission is to unite the planet through love or hatred. At this point, what's the difference? Common ground is common ground. The title of this treatise is called Culture versus Morality. Quick summary for those without the time or patience to read the entire treaty. The culture of certainty divides us with reckless ignorance. Their ignorance censors your truth. Your ignorance censors their truth. Certainty equals closed-minded. Hypocrites are predators in denial. Victims deify false prophets. Is stealing theft if the gullible give. Division is our strength. It reveals at a glance who is our friend or foe without getting to know them. Liberals control culture, and conservatives control morality. Political segregation is still segregation. Here we are. The culture of certainty divides us. What does that mean? There exists a natural divide amongst nations who insist on grouping people by their cannots and will nots. What does that mean? Will you tolerate me politically? Depends on who you support. Is there common ground between us? Will you tolerate me psychologically? Only if you tolerate me politically. I can't support a party that threatens my well-being. However, with some incentive, I won't support a party that threatens your well-being. Well, that means common ground is conditional. Nations are built on foundations of conditional agreements. Conditions shift primarily thanks to two emotional factors, culture and morality. There are people who are ruled by these emotional factors, and there are people who rule by these emotional factors. The people who are ruled are closed-minded, hypocritical victims. Remember, certainty equals closed-minded. Hang on, let me rethink that. Certainty equals closed-minded. The people who rule are closed-minded, objective predators. Now layer on top the emotional factors that control conditional foundations, leaving a tremendous necessity to deceive in order to grease the wheels of democracy. I don't have a fucking clue what democracy means, and it turns out I don't have to. I observe behavior, not politics. Now I'm going to present a series of diagrams to illustrate my points clearly. We're all hypocrites. Why? Selfish cowardice. Victims are selfish because they are unwilling to defend themselves. Why? They are cowards. Promises are meant to be broken because it keeps victims victims. Nothing satisfies a victim more than complaining about other people. Do you see why hypocrisy is so popular? There's always someone else to blame. Not me. I'm a victim. You broke your promise again. This is how predators rule. Here's the best part. Hypocrites are predators in denial. Victimhood is a vocation. Like racism, race is a curse to a victim. However, race is a blessing to a predator. Victimhood becomes a platform to promote one's ascension into power. Celebrity creates false prophets. Victims deify false prophets because they are witnessing the transition of a hypocrite to a predator. The cruel irony is their livelihood hinges on victims' approval. This is why false prophets are destined to control through cultural morality, the foundation of democracy. I encourage you to read the mythology of the muse to understand the draw to be validated. Again, this is another tool of the predator to rule its victims. A couple of years ago, I got cold called by a company claiming to love my book and wanted to promote it. They offered me $250,000. I was speechless. I told my wife in the belief this news would be rewarded with her validation. Thankfully, her complete lack of confidence in me paid off. Long story short, it was a scam, but I learned something very insightful about the predator. Do you know what it is? Is stealing theft or is gullible give? If I ask for your credit card and you give it to me, is it stealing? No. Why? It was a gift. Of course, we have to police that behavior because victims are victims for a reason. Gullible. Are you a victim? What? Hell no, man. Wait, where's my wallet? Police. Help me. I'm a victim now. What happens if everyone stopped being gullible? Who the fuck needs cops? What happens if racism disappears? That platform for ascension no longer exists. Who needs celebrities to influence culture or morality when it only serves to divide and charge us merchandise for the privilege? Oh, baby, I got me a pair of Air Jordans. I'm going to look fly tonight. By the way, John does not play. He's Italian. So, but I'm picturing him saying this. Division is our strength. I'm a Ewing fan, so because you are wearing Air Jordans, I know you are inferior. Why? Propaganda, peer pressure, etc. I won't tolerate you psychologically if you can't tolerate my choice of sportswear. Is there common ground? We both like basketball. What if we both wore different shoes? My friends would kick my ass. I can't. Division reveals at a glance, who is friend or foe. Fight or fuck. Why not trust your instincts? Predators discourage that. Why? If you can't trust your own instincts, you'll trust anything, i.e. gullible. The objective hypocrite is a hypocrite who is self-aware. The objective hypocrite has the authority to call out cowardice and hypocrisy only because they know themselves. Only through courage and convictions will they become truly objective. A certain mind is a closed mind. It can be divided in more ways than one. I'll use American politics for an example. There are liberals and conservatives. Two halves qualify as division. Within that is a further and equal divide within the parties, objective and hypocrite. This explains the division within the parties. Remember, hypocrites graduate to predators thanks to the support of victims who are unwilling to help themselves. Objective people are predators by nature, and they love to prey on victims' gullibility. I'd almost argue there's a little bit of Operation Evil there, because I no longer wish to, going to be a victim. I'll profit off of it. Why predictable? Profit is predictable. Politics signal about yourself, something you cannot or won't change. There's a lot to unpack here. There are four quarters to American politics: the divide against parties, the divide within parties. This is when the title of this article comes into play. Liberals control American culture, and conservatives control American morality. On the surface, it is clear-cut, but as I've explained, society consists of closed-minded people. The conditions with which grease democracy comes from psychology of common ground. Let's take a liberal objective and a conservative objective. What's the common ground? Predators. Politically, they're repulsive, like an old married couple. However, psychologically attractive thanks to the novelty of relating to your opposition like an affair. Let's take a look at the liberal objective and liberal hypocrite. What's the common ground? Culture. Now I'll address the elephant in the room. Did you notice that red bullseye with the illustration labeled courage to kill? Well, that happens when there is no common ground. None. The phlegm-spitting anger I see in those who I wish dead, given the right circumstances, I would relish spilling their blood. Welcome to the crossroads. This is where government and media controls us by painting the opposition as inferior. Let's take a liberal hypocrite and a conservative objective. The conservative has the advantage of critical thinking. However, the liberal has the advantage of influencing culture. Both are dangerous and destructive weapons. Let's take a liberal objective and a conservative hypocrite. The liberal has the advantage of critical thinking. However, the conservative hypocrite is territorial. Compared to the enemy, everyone who believes they are certain are closed-minded to the possibility they are not perfect. That culture divides us unless we expand briefly. I think the greatest activists instill doubt. People become less certain in a flawed system. It's flawed because the system must accommodate the majority, not the nation. The president rules the majority. The other half has to deal with disappointment for at least 4 years. The war between culture and morality will never stop because our addiction to reaction has been nurtured our whole lives. How culture and morality are akin to oil and vinegar. Culture resents any moral restrictions that limits their freedom to express themselves. Morality resents freedom of expression because it breaks the limits of morality that are in place to protect a fine spirit. Sex and free speech. Hang on. Sex and free speech. Liberals' greatest point of contention with conservatives is free speech. Censorship is despicable. If liberals are so ill-equipped to process incompatible thought, you choose to disable critical thinking, preferring to arrest what triggers signal within you to adapt to adversity. Conservatives' greatest point of contention with liberals is sex. Shame is despicable. If conservatives are so ill-equipped to process incompatible thought, you choose to disable critical thinking, preferring to arrest what triggers signal within you to adapt to adversity. There's so many layers to this, I'll have to illustrate it for you. Of course, some of this will be hard to follow unless you read Mythology of the Muse. I'm a dad with a daughter and son. It's my only qualification to weigh in on this topic. Ideally, a father is chivalrous. A father recognizes chivalry. It's confusing because daughters love to hate broken men. Why? Reminds them of their father. How? Disappointment. What if you grew up without a good father? I have no idea. Women reward poor behavior out of spite or soothing. Spite acknowledges the predator within. Soothing acknowledges the victim within. Men are the reflection of women's fathers. That's why women love men that disappoint them so much. Women have the power to decide who hurts them. No one can take that away from him. Why is that important? The president is the nation's father. Get it? If you grew up with a good father, the president reminds you. The president reminds you of your father. You enjoy his reign. If you grew up with a good father and the president does not remind you of your father, let me ask you this. What do you acknowledge within? Spite or soothing? This is why the war on fathers will persist, because people deify false prophets for guidance. By lowering the bar for fathers, you raise the expectations of elected officials' ability to deliver. Promises are made to be broken. That's what keeps the population in victimhood. Sound familiar? How do you fix this? War. But that won't happen domestically because they are a nation of closed-minded, hypocritical victims. They are unwilling to defend themselves, but more than willing to incite violence. Why? Common ground forces us to relate to our enemy. That leaves those who have no common ground. I bring up the example I gave with the shoes. The division within the party will rage for fear of repercussion should they not comply within their own party. A nation of can'ts and won'ts. This is where foreign entities supply conditions that create common ground to steer the conflict. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. When Trump won the presidency, Democrats blamed Russia. Republicans poo-pooed it. When Biden won the presidency, Republicans blamed China. Democrats poo-pooed it. Those nations are political boogeymen. A hypocrite that accuses hypocrites of being hypocrites are certain their views are flawless. This plays it in the hands of your opposition's friend. Democrats are in bed with China. And Republicans are in bed with Russia. This is an example of the losers playing the victim card. Rather than accept the outcome and move on, they spend the next 4 years trying to oust their illegitimate leader. Losers dictate the outcome of defeat because it challenges the legitimacy of the contest. Again, show me a fair election. No such thing. This guarantees there to be conflict because it divides. Leaders want division because it's practical. It's impossible to please everyone. Leaders decide who they disappoint. Opposition. Victims decide who disappoints them. False prophets. And that's that. There you go. If you want, what did I call this? Meditations, readings by Cappy reads. If you want Cappy to read, there you go. You can contact me for a fee. I'll see you guys later. Toodles.